There are moments in history when a single event forces the world to rethink everything it thought it understood about war. These moments rarely announce themselves in advance. They appear suddenly, often in the form of a new weapon or a new technology that changes the balance between attack and defense. The first time nuclear weapons were used during the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the nature of global conflict changed forever. Decades later, the introduction of stealth aircraft once again altered the battlefield, allowing aircraft to slip through radar networks that had once seemed impenetrable. In more recent years, armed drones have shown that even heavily protected targets can be reached with precision from thousands of kilometers away. Now, another moment may be unfolding, one centered on a new missile revealed by Iran that many analysts believe could challenge the assumptions behind modern missile defense. The weapon in question is known as the Fateh-3 hypersonic missile, a system that Iran claims represents a major leap forward in offensive missile technology. According to descriptions released by Iranian sources and widely discussed in military circles, the missile travels at hypersonic speed, reportedly up to Mach 15, which is 15 times the speed of sound. At such velocity, a missile can cross hundreds of kilometers in just a few minutes, leaving extremely little time for detection, analysis, and interception. But the speed alone is not what has attracted the most attention. What makes the weapon particularly unusual is its ability to divide into multiple warheads while in flight. Instead of continuing toward its target as a single object, the missile is said to split apart in the upper atmosphere, releasing numerous independent warheads that descend toward their targets from slightly different directions. For missile defense systems, this kind of design presents a unique challenge. Traditionally, when a missile is launched, radar systems track a single object moving along a predictable path. Interceptor missiles are then fired to collide with that object before it reaches the ground. This process happens extremely quickly and often automatically, relying on advanced sensors and computers to make decisions in fractions of a second. Israel's widely known defense network, particularly the Iron Dome, was designed precisely for this purpose. Over the past decade, Iron Dome has gained global recognition for its ability to intercept rockets and short-range missiles fired toward populated areas. By calculating whether an incoming rocket is likely to land in a dangerous location, the system can selectively launch interceptors and destroy the threat in midair, preventing casualties and damage on the ground. Because of its success, Iron Dome has often been viewed as one of the most effective missile defense systems ever built. Its intercept rate in real conflict situations has been widely reported as extremely high, and the system has saved countless lives during periods of intense rocket fire. The reputation of Iron Dome has grown so strong that many observers began to assume it could handle almost any aerial threat. However, the emergence of new missile technologies has begun to challenge that assumption. Hypersonic weapons, by definition, travel faster and maneuver more unpredictably than the types of rockets that systems like Iron Dome were originally designed to defeat. If the claims surrounding the Fateh-3 are accurate, the missile introduces not just greater speed, but a completely different tactical problem. Imagine a defense radar detecting a single incoming missile approaching at enormous velocity. The system begins calculating its trajectory and preparing to intercept. Then, within seconds, the object suddenly breaks apart, transforming from one target into many. Instead of tracking a single incoming threat, the radar must now track multiple warheads appearing almost simultaneously. Each one is traveling at extreme speed, each approaching from a slightly different angle, and each requiring its own interception solution. In practical terms, this means the defense system must make several decisions at once, identifying every incoming Warhead, determining which ones pose the greatest threat, and launching interceptors quickly enough to destroy them before impact. Speed makes the problem even more severe. At Mach 15, the amount of time between detection and potential impact shrinks dramatically. Consider the approximate distance between Tehran and Tel Aviv. A missile traveling at such velocity could theoretically cover that distance in only a matter of minutes. During that short window, defense systems would need to confirm the launch, track the missile, predict its path, and deploy interceptors. When the missile separates into multiple warheads during the final phase of flight, the already narrow reaction window becomes even smaller. Even the most advanced defense networks rely on a sequence of actions that must occur in precise order, and every step consumes precious seconds. The concept behind such a weapon reflects a broader shift in military thinking. For decades, many nations invested heavily in defensive technologies intended to protect cities and military bases from missile attack. Radar networks became more sophisticated, interceptor missiles became faster, and computer systems became capable of processing enormous amounts of data almost instantly. Yet every defensive system has limits. Engineers must balance factors such as cost, reaction time, radar coverage, and the number of interceptor missiles available at any given moment. Offensive weapons designers, meanwhile, constantly search for ways to exploit those limits. Instead of simply building a faster missile, they attempt to create situations where defensive systems must respond to too many threats at once. This approach is sometimes described as overwhelming a defense network. Rather than relying on the power of a single warhead, the strategy uses speed, numbers, and complexity to create confusion for the defending system. If a defense radar suddenly detects multiple incoming objects traveling at hypersonic speeds, the system may struggle to prioritize which targets to engage first. Even if interceptors are launched successfully, the sheer number of incoming warheads could mean that some slip through. In military planning, this concept is known as saturation, flooding a defense system with more targets than it can reasonably handle within the available time. Iran's focus on missile development did not emerge overnight. Since the late 20th century, particularly after the Iranian Revolution, the country has faced significant restrictions on purchasing advanced military equipment from abroad. Many analysts believe this would permanently limit Iran's military capabilities, especially in areas such as modern fighter aircraft or large naval platforms. Instead, Iranian planners appear to have concentrated their resources on technologies that could be developed domestically, with ballistic missiles becoming a central pillar of their defense strategy. Over time, Iran built an extensive missile program, developing a wide range of systems with varying ranges and capabilities. Within that broader program, hypersonic research represents a particularly ambitious step. Hypersonic weapons travel at speeds greater than Mach 5 and often possess the ability to maneuver during flight, making them far more difficult to intercept than traditional ballistic missiles. Until recently, only a handful of countries, most notably the United States, Russia, and China, were widely believed to possess advanced hypersonic technology. The emergence of a system like the Fatah-3, if confirmed to perform as described, would suggest that such capabilities are spreading beyond the world's largest military powers. Whether every claim surrounding the missile proves accurate remains a subject of debate among defense experts. Military announcements, especially regarding new weapons, often include elements of strategic messaging intended to project strength or deter potential adversaries. Nevertheless, even the possibility of such technology functioning as described is enough to attract serious attention from governments and defense analysts around the world. In modern warfare, perception can be almost as powerful as reality. If potential opponents believe a weapon can bypass their defenses, the psychological and strategic consequences can be significant. What makes this development particularly important is not simply the missile itself, but the broader question it raises about the future of missile defense. Systems like Iron Dome were designed to address a specific type of threat, and they have performed that role exceptionally well. Yet warfare evolves constantly, driven by new technologies and new strategies. Each time a defensive measure becomes widely trusted, offensive systems are developed to challenge it. The appearance of hypersonic cluster missiles may represent the latest stage in this ongoing cycle, a reminder that the contest between attack and defense never truly ends, and that every technological breakthrough eventually forces nations to rethink how they protect their skies. To understand why a weapon like the Fata-3 hypersonic missile could create such a difficult challenge for modern defense systems, it is necessary to first understand what those systems were originally designed to do. Israel's widely known missile defense network, particularly the Iron Dome, was not built to defeat every possible airborne threat. Instead, it was designed for a very specific battlefield problem that Israel faced for many years: short-range rockets fired toward populated areas from nearby territories. These rockets, although dangerous, follow relatively simple ballistic paths and travel at speeds that allow a small but workable window of time for interception. Iron Dome was engineered precisely for this environment, and within that role it has been extraordinarily effective. At the heart of Iron Dome's operation is a sequence of events that happens extremely quickly, but follows a clear structure. The moment a rocket is launched, radar systems detect the object rising into the air. Those radars immediately begin tracking its movement, feeding data into a computerized command system that calculates the rocket's trajectory. Within seconds, the system determines whether the rocket will land in an open area or threaten a populated zone, such as a city or critical infrastructure site. If the rocket is predicted to fall harmlessly, the system ignores it, conserving its interceptor missiles. But if the calculations show that the rocket will strike a dangerous location, Iron Dome launches an interceptor missile designed to collide with the incoming projectile and destroy it in midair before it reaches the ground. This selective interception approach is one of the reasons the system has gained such an impressive reputation. Instead of wasting interceptors on every single rocket, Iron Dome focuses only on those that pose a real threat. Over years of real-world use, the system has intercepted thousands of rockets, preventing casualties and damage that might otherwise have been severe. However, the very design choices that made Iron Dome so efficient against short-range rockets also define the limits of what it can do. Like every defense system ever built, it was optimized for a particular type of threat, and when that threat changes dramatically, the system can begin to struggle. One of the most important limitations any missile defense network faces is the number of interceptor missiles available at a given moment. Interceptors are expensive, complex weapons that cannot simply be launched endlessly. Each battery of Iron Dome has a finite supply of interceptor missiles ready to fire, and once those are used, the system must be resupplied. In most real-world scenarios involving rocket attacks, this limitation is manageable because rockets typically arrive in waves rather than all at once, allowing the system to engage them sequentially. But when a weapon introduces many simultaneous targets traveling at extreme speed, the number of available interceptors becomes a critical factor. Even a highly capable defense system can be overwhelmed if it must attempt to intercept too many threats within a very short period of time. Reaction time represents another major constraint. The entire process of missile interception depends on a chain of events that must occur in the correct order. Detection must happen first. Then the system must confirm that the object is indeed a threat. Next, it must calculate the flight path and determine where and when an interception should occur. Only after those calculations are complete can the interceptor missile be launched. Even with advanced automation and powerful computers, these steps require time. Against slower projectiles, that time exists. But as the speed of incoming weapons increases, the available reaction window shrinks rapidly. This is where hypersonic technology becomes particularly disruptive. Hypersonic weapons travel at speeds greater than Mach 5, but the Theta-3 is often described as capable of speeds approaching Mach 15. At such velocity, the difference between detection and impact can be measured in only a few minutes or even less, depending on the launch distance. For a defense system, this dramatically reduces the margin for error. Radar systems must identify the incoming object almost immediately after launch, and the command network must make decisions extremely quickly. Any delay in detection, data processing, or interceptor launch could allow the weapon to reach its target before interception is possible. High speed also complicates radar tracking itself. Objects traveling at hypersonic velocity can behave differently in the atmosphere compared to slower missiles. The intense friction generated by moving through the air at such speed can create plasma effects around the missile, potentially interfering with certain types of radar signals. While modern radar systems are designed to handle many complex tracking scenarios, the faster an object moves, the harder it becomes to maintain a precise and continuous track. Accurate tracking is essential for interception because the interceptor missile must be guided to collide with a target moving at extraordinary speed. Even small errors in prediction can result in a miss. However, speed alone does not fully explain why a system like Iron Dome might struggle against a weapon such as the Theta-3. The most significant factor is the missile's ability to separate into multiple warheads during the final phase of flight. Traditional rockets or missiles usually remain a single object from launch until impact. This means that once the defense system calculates their trajectory, it can focus on intercepting that one object. A cluster warhead design fundamentally changes the situation. When the missile reaches a certain point in the upper atmosphere, it splits into numerous independent warheads that spread apart and descend toward their targets simultaneously. At that moment, the defensive challenge multiplies. Instead of tracking one object, the radar must now track many. Each warhead appears as a separate target, each moving at extremely high speed, and each potentially requiring its own interceptor. The defense system must instantly analyze which warheads pose the greatest danger and allocate interceptors accordingly. If there are more incoming targets than available interceptors, some of those warheads may not be engaged at all. To visualize the difficulty, imagine standing on a field while someone throws a single ball toward you. With a clear view and enough time to react, catching it is straightforward. Now imagine that instead of one ball, 15 are thrown toward you at the same time from slightly different angles. Your attention must divide instantly between multiple objects moving quickly in different directions. Even if you manage to catch one or two, the rest are likely to pass by simply because the human body cannot react to so many simultaneous threats. Missile defense systems face a similar challenge when confronted with multiple high-speed warheads appearing at once. The situation becomes even more complicated. If those warheads approach from slightly different trajectories, radar and interception algorithms are designed to predict where a target will be in the future based on its current motion. When numerous objects appear and diverge from one another, the system must calculate separate interception solutions for each one. Each solution involves launching an interceptor missile at precisely the right moment, so that the two objects collide in midair, performing that calculation for many targets simultaneously, all within seconds, pushes the limits of even the most advanced defense systems. Another factor is the physical distance between the defense battery and the target area it protects. Interceptor missiles require a certain amount of time to accelerate, climb, and reach the predicted interception point. If incoming warheads are traveling extremely fast, the interceptors must reach them quickly enough to destroy them before they descend too close to the ground. When speeds reach hypersonic levels, the window for successful interception becomes increasingly narrow. Even small delays in launch timing can mean that the interceptor arrives too late to prevent impact. For these reasons, a missile that combines hypersonic speed with multiple independent warheads represents a particularly complex challenge. It is not simply faster than older missiles. It introduces a combination of speed, numbers, and timing that can push defensive systems beyond the conditions they were designed to handle. This does not necessarily mean that missile defense becomes impossible, but it does mean that systems must evolve to address new kinds of threats. Engineers may need to develop faster interceptors, more powerful radar networks, or entirely new defensive concepts, capable of responding to large numbers of high-speed targets simultaneously. In the constant competition between offensive and defensive technologies, each side adapts to the other. When defenses improve, attackers search for ways to bypass them. When new offensive weapons appear, defense engineers begin developing countermeasures. The emergence of hypersonic cluster missiles represents the latest stage in this ongoing technological contest. For systems like Iron Dome, which were designed to protect civilians from rocket attacks, the challenge now lies in adapting to a world where the speed and complexity of incoming weapons may be increasing faster than ever before. The emergence of the Fata-3 hypersonic missile does not exist in isolation. Weapons like this are not simply technological achievements. They are products of political decisions, strategic calculations, and historical circumstances that shape how nations defend themselves. To understand why Iran invested so heavily in missile technology, it is necessary to look back at the geopolitical conditions that followed the Iranian Revolution in 1979. That revolution dramatically reshaped Iran's relationship with much of the world, particularly Western nations, and the consequences of that shift had long-term effects on the country's military development. In the years following the revolution, Iran faced significant international isolation and economic sanctions. These restrictions limited the country's ability to purchase advanced military hardware from foreign suppliers. Prior to 1979, Iran had relied heavily on Western technology, including modern aircraft and sophisticated weapon systems. But after the revolution, access to those resources became extremely limited. Over time, Iran found itself in a situation where it could not easily replace aging aircraft fleets, acquire cutting-edge defense systems, or participate freely in the global arms market. For many countries, such limitations would have severely weakened military capability. Instead, Iranian defense planners adopted a different strategy. Rather than attempting to compete directly in areas where sanctions created major obstacles, such as advanced fighter aircraft or large naval fleets, Iran concentrated on weapons systems that could be developed domestically with fewer external dependencies. Missile technology quickly became the centerpiece of that strategy. Ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and eventually hypersonic systems offered a way to create strategic deterrence. without relying on expensive platforms like aircraft carriers or large air forces. By focusing on research, engineering, and underground production facilities, Iran gradually built one of the most extensive missile programs in the Middle East. Within that broader effort emerged the Fatah series of missiles. The first major announcement came in 2023 when Iran revealed the Fatah-1 hypersonic missile, which officials described as a domestically developed hypersonic weapon. Hypersonic missiles are generally defined as weapons capable of traveling at speeds greater than Mach 5 while often retaining some maneuverability during flight. For years, such technology was considered the domain of only a few major military powers. Countries like the United States, Russia, and China had invested heavily in hypersonic research, seeing it as a potential way to bypass traditional missile defense systems. When Iran announced that it had developed its own hypersonic missile, the claim attracted immediate attention from defense analysts worldwide. Even if some details of the system remained unclear, the announcement itself suggested that hypersonic technology might be spreading beyond the world's largest military powers. The next step in that progression came with reports of the Fatah-2 hypersonic missile, which was described as an improved version of the earlier design, according to available descriptions. The second iteration focused on better guidance systems and increased maneuverability. A missile that can adjust its trajectory during flight presents a far more complicated interception problem than one that follows a predictable ballistic arc. If a weapon can change direction at high speed, it becomes significantly harder for defensive systems to calculate where it will be in the future. The most dramatic evolution in the series is associated with the Fatah-3 concept. Unlike its predecessors, which were already notable for their speed and maneuverability, this version introduces the idea of cluster-style warheads. Instead of striking a target as a single projectile, the missile is described as separating into multiple independent warheads during the final phase of flight. This design dramatically increases the complexity of the threat facing missile defense systems. Rather than intercepting one object, defenders must track and potentially intercept many, each approaching at extreme speed. From a strategic perspective, this shift reflects a broader principle in modern warfare: creating weapons that overwhelm defenses through speed, numbers, and unpredictability. The implications of such developments extend well beyond Iran itself. In the Middle East, security dynamics are shaped by a complex network of rivalries, alliances, and historical tensions. Whenever one country introduces a major new military capability, neighboring states inevitably begin to reassess their own security positions. Governments must consider whether existing defense systems remain adequate and whether new investments are necessary to maintain deterrence. In the case of Iran's missile program, several regional powers are paying particularly close attention. Countries such as Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan all operate in the same broader strategic environment and face many of the same security uncertainties. Each of these nations maintains its own military capabilities and defense strategies, but the appearance of advanced hypersonic weapons within the region could alter the calculations that guide those strategies. When one state gains access to a technology that potentially bypasses existing defense systems, others may feel pressure to develop comparable weapons or invest in new defensive technologies capable of countering them. This dynamic is one of the fundamental drivers behind arms races. Throughout history, an arms race does not necessarily begin with open conflict. Instead, it often starts quietly. As governments increase research funding, expand military procurement programs, and accelerate technological development, defense ministries analyze emerging threats. Scientists begin exploring new countermeasures, and military planners revise their strategic doctrines. Over time, these actions can lead to rapid technological competition as countries seek to avoid falling behind their rivals. The introduction of hypersonic weapons into regional arsenals could therefore trigger a new phase of military modernization across the Middle East. The significance of these developments becomes even greater when viewed on a global scale. For decades, the most advanced military technologies were largely concentrated in a small group of powerful nations. Developing cutting-edge weapons required enormous financial resources, sophisticated industrial infrastructure, and access to specialized components. Many analysts assumed that these barriers would prevent smaller or sanctioned states from reaching the same technological level. However, if a country operating under extensive international restrictions can still produce advanced hypersonic systems, it suggests that the barriers to entry may be lower than previously believed. This possibility raises important questions for global security. If hypersonic technology becomes more widely accessible, the number of countries capable of deploying such weapons could increase over time. As more nations gain access to high-speed, maneuverable missiles, the effectiveness of traditional missile defense systems may decline. Systems designed to intercept slower ballistic missiles or rockets could struggle to cope with faster, more complex threats. As a result, countries around the world may need to rethink how they design and deploy defensive technologies. Major powers are already investing heavily in next-generation missile defense concepts, including advanced radar networks, faster interceptors, and entirely new approaches such as directed energy weapons. Yet the development of these defenses often takes years or even decades. During that time, offensive technologies may continue to evolve. The relationship between attack and defense has always been a technological competition, with each side adapting to the other. Hypersonic weapons represent one of the newest fronts in that competition. Ultimately, the appearance of missiles like the Fata-3 signals more than a single technological breakthrough. It highlights a broader shift in the strategic landscape, where speed, maneuverability, and multiple warhead designs are becoming central features of modern weapons. For countries around the world, the challenge will be determining how to respond, whether through new defensive technologies, diplomatic agreements aimed at limiting such weapons, or strategic adjustments that account for their growing presence. In that sense, the true impact of these missiles may not lie solely in their destructive power, but in the way they reshape global discussions about security, deterrence, and the future of warfare. In the long history of military technology, certain weapons stand out not simply because of their destructive power, but because they force the world to rethink how wars might be fought in the future. The emergence of the Fata-3 hypersonic missile appears to be one of those moments. It is not just another missile added to an existing arsenal. Instead, it represents a broader shift in the balance between offensive and defensive technology. By combining extreme speed, maneuverability, and the ability to deploy multiple warheads, weapons of this kind challenge many of the assumptions that modern missile defense systems were built upon. For decades, advanced defensive networks such as the widely recognized Iron Dome have provided a sense of security for nations facing rocket and missile threats. These systems demonstrated that technology could intercept incoming weapons before they reached cities and civilian populations. Yet the rapid evolution of hypersonic missiles suggests that the competition between attack and defense is entering a new phase, as offensive weapons become faster and more complex. Existing defense systems may struggle to keep pace without significant technological upgrades. This growing gap between offensive capability and defensive protection has profound implications for global security. When countries believe their defenses may no longer guarantee protection, they often respond by developing new weapons of their own, investing in more advanced defenses, or altering their strategic doctrines. The result can be an accelerating cycle of technological competition among nations. In that sense, the significance of the Fata-3 goes far beyond a single missile test. It symbolizes the arrival of a new era in military technology, one where hypersonic speed, multi-warhead systems, and rapid strike capabilities could redefine the nature of deterrence and warfare. If offensive innovation continues to outpace defensive solutions, the international security environment may become more unstable and far less predictable in the years ahead.